I think patents on life are wrong for three reasons.
Seeds bill is a terrible bill. I mean, the Biodiversity Act is still better than the seeds bill.
Nothing could be more anti-nature than the idea of terminating life.
The WTO still has provisions which can allow biopiracy.
The Eastern Himalayas, a global biodiversity hotspot. Home to some of the rarest and most endemic flora and fauna. Also the center of origin for various crops, vegetables and fruits. This is the land of the Lepchas, people of the hills, living in harmony with nature for nearly 2,500 years. Once hunter-gatherers, Lepchas are now skilled paddy farmers. They have developed an intimate relationship with the environment around them and the available natural resources. Their social sanctions, cultural, spiritual, customary principles, protocols and traditional practices have helped conserve these resources. Like other indigenous and local communities across India, the Lepchas are dependent on the natural and biological resources for their life and livelihoods. Over generations, they have developed a deep-rooted knowledge system linked to the use of these natural resources. The Lepchas have preserved this traditional knowledge, passing it down through successive generations. This knowledge is mostly unwritten. This wealth of biological diversity and the knowledge associated with it is vital for global food security and climate change adaptation. However, it is estimated that 3/4 of crop diversity has already been lost over the last century. In the Kalimpong and Sikkim region of the Eastern Himalayas, rice has been held in reverence by these communities. No festivals, gatherings or rituals are complete without it. At one point, more than 600 traditional varieties of rice reportedly grew in this ecologically rich region. The region is now inhabited by many other ethnic communities who have blended seamlessly with the Lepchas, forming a close-knit community. Each aspect of their life is guided by customary principles and protocols. Principle of reciprocity being one. Largely subsistence farmers, the Lepchas grow traditional crops and vegetables. Seeds for these varieties are not available in the market. Farmers rely on self-saved or locally saved seeds. Farming community in this region practices the age-old tradition of seed exchange. Extensive diversity of crop gene pool in this region can be attributed to this ingenious practice of seed exchange. Seeds are exchanged in equal quantity. Farmers have complete choice over variety to be exchanged and later grown in the fields. Seed exchange, which exemplifies reciprocity, is not limited to a few villages. Its popularity is beyond the boundaries of state or even countries.
यो धानको नाम चाहिँ कालो नुनिया भन्छ। यसलाई चाहिँ हामीले नेपालको दमकबाट बिउ ल्याएको हो। दमकबाट कालिम्पोङ ल्याउनको लागि चाहिँ हामीहरू नेपालबाट काम गर्न आउने दाइहरुको तर्फबाट हाम्रोमा आइपुग्यो। कहिले सिक्किमको मधेसबाट यो सिङताम रम्फूबाट ल्याएर लगाउँछु र सालैपछि यस्तो प्रकारले खोजेर बेसी मात्रामा फल्छ भनेर चाहिँ हामीले ल्याएर लगाउँछु।
Seed exchange, preparation of fields, raising bunds, sowing, transplanting of paddy seedling, sharing of water, weeding, harvesting, and winnowing are all a collective effort. The practice of pooling labor during the agricultural season is called khetla, where farmers help each other in their farms. No money exchanges hands. Instead, the host family provides a wholesome meal along with a traditional brew called chi. Made from finger millets, this brew is sipped out of bamboo glasses through a bamboo straw. Decisions regarding varieties to be planted, distribution of water, and any disputes in these matters are influenced by the traditional institution, the Samaj. Sowing begins with rituals. Spirits are evoked, followed by special prayers for a healthy, abundant crop. Prayers are again offered at the time of the first harvest. Only after an offering is made to the mountain gods can people enjoy their produce.
अन्नबालीहरुलाई हामीले पहिला हाम्रै देवदेवताहरुलाई चाहिँ धन्यवाद गर्दै हामीले उहाँलाई पुकार्छौं। जो अन्नबाली लगायौं त्यसमा हामीलाई अब रखवाली गरेर चाहिँ हावा पानी हुन्डी तुफानबाट पनि अन्नबालीलाई बचाएर ल्यायो।
Women are natural seed selectors and take on the responsibility of selecting the best seeds. The collected seeds are sun-dried and placed in a special bamboo container. It is then covered with dried paddy straw. No resource is wasted, not even cow dung. Cow dung is smeared over the container. Cow dung has germicidal properties and thus will protect the grains. The demand for robust and diverse varieties of seeds in the research and genetic engineering industry has led to an increase in bioprospecting in biologically rich areas. Although no incidents of biopiracy in rice have been reported from this region, instances of piracy of beetles, butterflies, and flowers have come to light. Since communities freely share their knowledge and bioresources, the threat of biopiracy is imminent.
If you go to the US, you will find a variety called Texmati. Of course, Basmati means the queen of aroma. Texmati literally means the queen of Texas. Can you imagine? All they had done was stolen the germplasm from a gene bank, crossed it with a local variety, but the aroma came from our Basmati.
For centuries, the local farmers have been producers and breeders of new varieties in their fields. The current legal framework on intellectual property rights does not recognize these innovations or knowledge of the farmers, which is considered as prior art or knowledge in public domain. Thus far, no protection has been accorded to this knowledge that has sustained local and global food security for generations. For these communities, financial benefits do not necessarily drive the need to innovate new varieties or sustain biodiversity. They see traditional knowledge as part of their cultural and spiritual identity. The locals take pride in sharing their heritage and knowledge with anyone who shows interest. This recognition itself is a reward and thus provides the farmers an incentive to protect their knowledge.
अब योपालि मेरोमा धान कतिको राम्रो भयो र अब यो धान अलिकति कमजोरी भयो भने म नेक्स्ट अर्को धान लाउँछु हो यस्तो पहिल्यै सोचेको हुन्छ र यो धान फलेको बेलामा नै अनुभव भइहाल्छ कि हामीलाई अब नेक्स्ट इयर चाहिँ अर्को लाउनु पर्ने रहेछ भनेर
Sadly, corporations exploit this openness and free sharing by the farmers. These corporations make minor modifications on the local varieties and patent this knowledge and prevent the farmers from using it. This illicit use is getting huge profits for such large corporations while the farmers remain penniless. To safeguard and protect its bioresources and traditional knowledge, India has signed several international agreements. However, laws which safeguard the interests of the industry and multinational corporations are more effectively enforced. Whereas interests of communities are largely ignored, as the Convention on Biological Diversity and the Biodiversity Act are very slow to be implemented at the national level.
The Biodiversity Act has very confusing provisions. So, on the one hand, it is an effort to try and protect the biodiversity, but it has actually turned out into a legislation that allows access to biodiversity, and I would say it's facilitating the wrong angle. And Seeds Bill is a terrible bill. I mean, the Biodiversity Act is still better than the Seeds Bill. The Seeds Bill is promoted very heavily by the seed industry and talks of their interests, and despite the amendments that have been made, it still carries many things. For example, there is no provision for price control, etc.
During recent years, a project implemented by EcoServe India, IIED UK, IDRC Canada, along with a local NGO Centre for Mountain Dynamics in 5 developing countries, is helping communities protect their traditional knowledge in accordance with their customary laws and practices. This action research project has highlighted that any regime or framework for protecting rights over knowledge should reflect the holistic worldview of the farming and local communities. This concept emphasizes on the collective rather than individual rights, addresses biodiversity and culture together, and recognizes traditional knowledge as heritage rather than property to show the custodianship and intergenerational character. This is being promoted as the collective biocultural heritage. Collective biocultural heritage is the knowledge, innovations, and practices of farmers and local communities which are often collectively held and closely linked to traditional resources and territories, including the diversity of genes, varieties, species, and ecosystems, cultural and spiritual values, and customary laws shaped within the socio-ecological context of communities.
The great advantage that India has is that not only do we have a very great variety of seeds of many crop plants, but we also have very valuable traditional knowledge about the properties of those seeds. So our seeds come with a sort of technology package, inbuilt technology package, which is very important if you want to adapt those seeds. Now, for instance, with climate change, our farmers know which seeds are drought tolerant, which seeds are heat tolerant. So there is a huge advantage in tapping this traditional knowledge of farmers and conserving the traditional varieties of seeds. One will not exist without the other.
Local communities have to be included in the process of policy and decision making. It is important to sensitize the law and policy makers towards customary laws and social practices of the local farmers that conserve and protect biogenetic resources. The community needs to be empowered with support from the government as well as the civil society organizations. Timely and appropriate facilities have to be extended to them. There is a need to create rural business hubs and information kiosks. This would help promote market linkages for traditional, nutritious, and organic crops. The women of the self-help groups in the region are processing their agricultural produce and using attractive packaging and labels to add value to the local produce. These women sell products made out of traditional crops through special outlets in high-end markets also. There is a huge potential for such products both in India and overseas. Certifications and fair trade labels help them get a premium on their produce and enable these farmers and self-help group women to access wider global markets. Documentation of biological and genetic resources and the traditional knowledge associated with these needs to be initiated at the village level. People's biodiversity registers provide for such documentation. Compilation of village-level registers serves two purposes. 1. Check loss of knowledge, and 2. Linking traditional knowledge with village-level biodiversity management planning. Farmers have domesticated, conserved, and improved thousands of crop varieties over millennia, which contain valuable traits like drought and pest resistance and which continue to adapt to changing local conditions. The food security of the whole world depends on the protection of farmers' rights to agricultural biodiversity and the related traditional knowledge. While technology is offering solutions and answers in hybrid and genetically modified varieties that are being introduced, a caution would not be out of place. The new varieties are known to lose the induced resistance soon, as these varieties adapt quickly. This enhances continued dependence of farmers using hybrid and genetically modified seeds on newer chemicals and seed varieties. Increased costs, together with vagaries of nature and markets, have not only reduced self-reliance of the farming community, but also made them vulnerable to distress. It is important to protect the intellectual property rights of the local farmers and empower them to take own decisions regarding their biocultural heritage. It is also urgently required to recognize and strengthen customary laws and traditional institutions that enforce these laws and principles. Biodiversity and the knowledge associated with it has been the strength that has seen the planet through difficult times. It is time to conserve it before it is too late.